I never told my son I made $40,000 a month, even though he always saw me living a simple life. One day, he invited me to dinner with his wife's parents, who were visiting from abroad. I decided to see how they would treat a poor person by pretending to be a broke, naive mother. But the moment I walked through that restaurant door, everything changed. What happened that night devastated my daughter-in-law and her family in a way they never imagined. And believe me, they deserved it. Let me explain how I got there. Let me tell you who I really am. Because my son Ethan, at 35, never knew the truth about his mother. To him, I was always just the woman who left early for the office, who came home tired in the evenings, who cooked with whatever was in the fridge. Just another employee, maybe a secretary, an ordinary someone, nothing special. And I never corrected him. I never told him I brought in $40,000 every month, that I'd been a senior executive at a multinational corporation for nearly 20 years, signing multi-million-dollar contracts and making decisions that affected thousands of people. Why tell him? Money was never something I needed to hang on the wall like a trophy. I grew up in a time when dignity was worn on the inside, when silence was worth more than hollow words. So I kept my truth. I lived in the same modest apartment for years. I used the same leather handbag until it wore out. I bought clothes at discount stores, cooked at home, saved everything, invested everything, and I became rich in silence. Because real power doesn't shout, real power watches. And I was watching very closely when Ethan called me that Tuesday afternoon. His voice sounded different, nervous, like when he was a child and had done something wrong. "Mom, I need to ask you a favor. Chloe's parents are visiting from abroad. It's their first time here. They want to meet you. We're having dinner on Saturday at a restaurant. Please come." Something in his tone unsettled me. It wasn't the voice of a son inviting his mother. It was the voice of someone asking not to be embarrassed, to fit in, to make a good impression. "Do they know anything about me?" I asked calmly. There was a silence. Then Ethan mumbled, "I told them you work in an office, that you live alone, that you're simple, that you don't have much." There it was, the word simple, as if my whole life fit into that miserable adjective, as if I were a problem he had to apologize for. I took a long, long breath. "All right, Ethan. I'll be there." I hung up and looked around. Old but comfortable furniture, walls without expensive paintings, a small TV, nothing to impress anyone. And at that moment I decided, if my son thought I was a poor woman, if his wife's parents came ready to judge, then I'd give them exactly what they expected to see. I would pretend to be broke, naive, and desperate. A mother barely surviving. I wanted to feel firsthand how they treated someone who had nothing. I wanted to see their real faces, because I suspected something. I suspected that Chloe and her family were the kind of people who measure others by their bank accounts. And my instincts never fail. Saturday arrived. I dressed in the worst outfit I owned. A light gray, shapeless, wrinkled dress, the kind you get at a second-hand store. Old, worn shoes, no jewelry, not even a watch. I took a faded cloth tote, tied my hair back in a messy ponytail, and looked in the mirror. I looked like a woman life had broken, forgettable, perfect. I got into a taxi and gave the address. A luxury restaurant in the most exclusive part of the city, one of those places where the menu has no prices, where each table setting costs more than the average monthly salary. As we drove, I felt something strange, a mix of anticipation and sadness. Anticipation because I knew something big was coming. Sadness because part of me still hoped I was wrong. I hoped they would treat me well, be kind, look beyond the old clothes. But the other part of me, the part that had spent 40 years among corporate sharks, knew exactly what to expect. The taxi stopped in front of the restaurant. Warm lights, a doorman with white gloves, elegant people walking in. I paid, got out, took a deep breath, crossed the threshold, and there they were. Ethan was standing next to a long table near the windows. Dark suit, white shirt, shiny shoes. He looked anxious. Beside him, Chloe, my daughter-in-law. She wore a fitted cream suit with gold details, high heels, her straight, perfect hair falling over her shoulders. Impeccable as always, but she wasn't looking at me. She was looking toward the entrance with a tense, almost embarrassed expression. And then I saw them. Chloe's parents, already seated at the table, waiting like royalty on their throne. The mother, Victoria, wore a tight emerald green dress full of sequins, jewelry at her neck, wrists, and fingers. Dark hair pulled up in an elegant bun, she had that cold, calculated beauty that intimidates. Next to her, Charles, her husband. Impeccable gray suit, an enormous watch on his wrist, a serious expression. Both looked like they'd stepped out of a luxury magazine. I walked toward them slowly, in short steps, as if I were afraid. Ethan saw me first, and his face changed. His eyes opened wide. He looked me up and down. I noticed him swallow. "Mom? You said you'd come," he sounded uncomfortable. "Of course, son. Here I am," I smiled shyly, the smile of a woman unaccustomed to places like that. Chloe greeted me with a quick kiss on the cheek, cold, mechanical. "Mother-in-law, so nice to see you." Her eyes said the opposite. She introduced me to her parents with an odd tone, almost apologetic. "Dad, Mom, this is Ethan's mother." Victoria lifted her gaze, studied me, and in that instant I saw it all. The judgment, the disdain, the disappointment. Her eyes ran over my wrinkled dress, my old shoes, my canvas bag. She said nothing at first. She just extended her hand, cold, quick, and weak. "A pleasure." Charles did the same. A limp handshake, a fake smile delighted. I sat in the chair at the end of the table, the farthest from them, as if I were a second-class guest. No one helped me pull out the chair. No one asked if I was comfortable. The waiter arrived with elegant, heavy menus written in French. I opened mine and pretended not to understand anything. Victoria watched me. "Do you need help with the menu?" she asked with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, please." "I don't know what these words mean," my voice came out small, timid. She sighed and ordered for me. "Something simple," she said. "Something that doesn't cost too much. We don't want to go overboard." The phrase hung in the air. Charles nodded. Ethan looked away. Chloe fidgeted with her napkin. No one said anything. And I just watched. Victoria started talking about general things. The trip from abroad, how tiring the flight was, how different everything was here. Then, subtly, she began to talk about money. She mentioned the hotel they were staying at, $1,000 a night. She mentioned the luxury car they had rented, obviously. She mentioned the stores they had visited. We bought a few things. Nothing important, just a few thousand. She spoke while looking at me, waiting for a reaction, waiting for me to be impressed. I just nodded. "How nice," I said. "It's wonderful," she continued. "You know, Olivia, we've always been very careful with money. We worked hard. We invested well. Now we have properties in 3 countries. Charles has big businesses, and I oversee our investments," she smiled with superiority. "And you? What exactly do you do?" Her tone was sweet, but poisonous. "I work in an office," I answered, lowering my gaze. "I do a little of everything, paperwork, filing, simple things." Victoria exchanged a look with Charles. "Ah, I see. Administrative work. That's fine. It's honest. All jobs are dignified, right?" "Of course," I replied. The food arrived. Huge plates with tiny portions, everything arranged like art. Victoria cut her steak with precision. "This costs $80, she said. "But it's worth it. Quality has a price. You can't eat just anything, can you?" I nodded. "Of course, you're right." Ethan tried to change the subject, talking about work and some projects. Victoria interrupted him. "Son, does your mother live alone?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, she has a tiny apartment." Victoria looked at me with fake pity. "That must be hard, right? Living alone at your age and without much support? And does your salary cover everything?" I felt the trap closing. I barely answered. "But I manage. I save where I can. I don't need much." Victoria sighed dramatically. "Oh, Olivia, you're very brave. Truly. I admire women who fight on their own. Although, of course, One always wishes to give more to her children, to give them a better life. But well, everyone gives what they can. There it was, the subtle but fatal blow. She was telling me I hadn't been enough for my son, that I hadn't given him what he deserved, that I was a poor, insufficient mother. Chloe stared at her plate. Ethan clenched his fists under the table, and I just smiled. Yes, you're right. Everyone gives what they can. Victoria went on. We always made sure Chloe had the best. She went to the best schools, traveled the world, learned 4 languages. Now she has an excellent job. She earns very well. And when she married Ethan, well, we helped a lot. We gave them money for the down payment on the house. We paid for their honeymoon, because that's who we are. We believe in supporting our children. She looked straight at me. And you, were you able to help Ethan with anything when they got married? The question floated like a sharpened knife. Not much, I replied. I gave them what I could, a small gift. Victoria smiled. How sweet. Every little bit counts, right? The amount doesn't matter. What matters is the intention. And that was when I felt the anger begin to stir inside me. Not explosive anger. It was cold, controlled, like a river under ice. I breathed slowly, kept the timid smile, and let Victoria keep talking, because that's what people like her do. They talk. They puff themselves up. They boast. And the more they talk, the more they reveal themselves, the more they expose the emptiness inside. Victoria took a sip of her expensive red wine, swirling it in her hand as if she were an expert. This wine is from an exclusive region of France. It's $200 a bottle, but when you know quality, you don't skimp. Do you drink wine, Olivia? Only on special occasions, I replied, and usually the cheapest one. I don't know much about these things. Victoria smiled condescendingly. Oh, don't worry. Not everyone has a trained palate. That comes with experience, travel, education. Charles and I have visited vineyards in Europe, South America, and California. We know quite a bit. Charles nodded. It's a hobby, something we enjoy. Chloe is learning too. She has good taste. She inherited it from us. He looked at Chloe with pride. Chloe managed a weak smile. Thanks, Mom. Victoria turned back to me. And you, Olivia, do you have any hobbies? Anything you enjoy in your free time? I shrugged. I watch TV, cook, take walks in the park, simple things. Victoria and Charles exchanged another look. A look loaded with meaning, with silent judgment. How lovely, Victoria said. Simplicity has its charm, too. Although, of course, one always aspires to more, right? To see the world, live new things, grow culturally. But, well, I understand not everyone has those opportunities. I nodded. You're right. Not everyone has those opportunities. The waiter came with desserts, tiny portions of something that looked like edible art. Victoria ordered the most expensive one, $30 for a slice of cake the size of a cookie. This is delicious, she said after the first bite. It has edible gold on top. See those little golden flakes? It's a detail only the best restaurants offer. I ate my dessert, simpler, cheaper, in silence. Victoria continued. You know, Olivia, I think it's important we talk about something as a family now that we're all here. She looked up. Her expression changed. It became serious, falsely maternal. Ethan is our son-in-law, and we love him very much. Chloe loves him, and we respect that decision. But as parents, we always want the best for our daughter. Ethan tensed. Mom, I don't think this is the time. Victoria raised her hand. Let me finish, son. It's important. She looked at me. Olivia, I understand you did the best you could with Ethan. I know raising him alone wasn't easy, and I truly respect you for that. But now Ethan is in another stage of his life. He's married. He has responsibilities and, well, Chloe and he deserve stability. Stability? I asked softly. Yes, Victoria replied. Financial and emotional stability. We've helped a lot and will keep helping. But we also believe it's important that Ethan not have unnecessary burdens. Her tone was clear. She was calling me a burden. Me, her mother-in-law. Chloe stared at her plate as if she wanted to disappear. Ethan's jaw was tight. Burdens? I repeated. Victoria sighed. I don't want to sound harsh, Olivia, but at your age, living alone on a limited salary, it's natural that Ethan worries about you, that he feels he should take care of you, and that's fine. He's a good son, but we don't want that concern to affect his marriage. Do you understand me? Perfectly, I replied. Victoria smiled. I'm glad you understand. That's why we wanted to talk to you. Charles and I have thought of something. She paused for effect. We could help you, financially, give you a small monthly allowance, something that would let you live more comfortably without Ethan having to worry so much. Obviously, it would be modest. We can't work miracles, but it would be support. I remained silent, looking at her, waiting. She went on. And in exchange, we'd only ask that you respect Ethan and Chloe's space, that you don't reach out to them so much, that you don't pressure them, that you give them the freedom to build their life together without interference. How does that sound? There it was, the offer, the bribe disguised as charity. They wanted to buy me. They wanted to pay me to disappear from my son's life, to not be a nuisance, to not embarrass their precious daughter with my poverty. Ethan exploded. Mom, that's enough. You don't have to. Victoria cut him off. Ethan, calm down. We're speaking as adults. Your mother understands, right? I took the napkin, dabbed my lips calmly, took a sip of water, and let the silence grow. Everyone was looking at me. Victoria with expectation, Charles with arrogance, Chloe with shame, Ethan with desperation. And then I spoke. My voice came out different. No longer timid, no longer small. It was firm, clear, and cold. It's an interesting offer, Victoria. Truly, very generous. Victoria smiled, triumphant. I'm glad you see it that way. I nodded. But I have a few questions, just to be sure I understand. Victoria blinked. Of course, ask whatever you want. I leaned forward a little. How much exactly would you consider a modest monthly allowance? Victoria hesitated. Well, we were thinking $500, maybe $700, depending. I nodded. I see. $700 a month for me to disappear from my son's life. Victoria frowned. I wouldn't put it like that, but yes, that's exactly how you put it, I replied. She adjusted herself in her chair. Olivia, I don't want you to misunderstand me. We only want to help. Of course. I said, help? How did you help with the house down payment? How much was it? Victoria nodded proudly. $40,000. Well, $40,000. Ah, $40,000. How generous. And the honeymoon? $15,000, Victoria said. It was 3 weeks around Europe. Incredible. Incredible, I replied. So you've invested about $55,000 in Ethan and Chloe. Victoria smiled. Well, when you love your children, you don't skimp. I nodded slowly. You're right. When you love your children, you don't skimp. But tell me something, Victoria. Did all that investment, all that money, buy you anything? Victoria blinked, confused. What do you mean? Did it buy you respect? I continued. Did it buy you real love, or just obedience? The atmosphere changed. Victoria stopped smiling. Excuse me? My tone sharpened. You've spent the whole night talking about money, how much things cost, how much you spent, how much you have, but you didn't ask even once how I'm doing. If I'm happy, if something hurts, if I need company. You only calculated my worth and, apparently, I'm worth $700 a month. Victoria paled. I didn't. Yes, I cut in. Yes, you did. Since I arrived, you've been measuring my worth with your wallet. And you know what I've discovered, Victoria? That people who only talk about money are the ones who least understand their true value. Charles stepped in. I think you're misinterpreting my wife's intentions. I looked straight at him. And what are her intentions? To treat me with pity? To humiliate me through the whole dinner? To offer me alms so I would vanish? Charles opened his mouth but said nothing. Ethan was pale. Mom, please. I looked at him. No, Ethan, please don't. I'm done keeping quiet. I set the napkin on the table. I leaned back in my chair. There was no timidity left in my posture. I wasn't shrinking anymore. I looked Victoria straight in the eyes. She held my gaze for a second, and then looked away, uncomfortable. Something had changed, and she felt it. They all did. Victoria, you said something very interesting a moment ago. You said you admire women who fight alone, who are brave. Victoria nodded slowly. Yes, I said that. Then let me ask you something. Have you ever fought alone? Have you ever worked without your husband backing you? Have you ever built something with your own hands, without your family's money? Victoria stammered. I have my own accomplishments. Such as what? I asked with genuine curiosity. Tell me. Victoria fixed her hair. I manage our investments. I oversee properties. I make important decisions in our businesses. I nodded. Businesses your husband built, properties you bought together, investments made with the money he generated, or am I mistaken? Charles, annoyed, jumped in. That's not fair. My wife works as much as I do. Of course, I replied calmly. I don't doubt she works. But there's a difference between administering money that already exists and creating it from scratch. Between supervising an empire you inherited and building it brick by brick, don't you think? Victoria pressed her lips together. I don't know where you're going with this, Olivia. I'll explain, I said. 40 years ago, I was 23. I was a secretary at a small company. I made minimum wage. I lived in a rented room. I ate the cheapest food I could find. And I was alone, completely alone. Ethan was staring at me. I had never told him this in such detail. I continued. One day I got pregnant. The father disappeared. My family turned their backs on me. I had to decide between moving forward or giving up. I chose to move forward. I worked until the last day of my pregnancy. I went back to work 2 weeks after Ethan was born. A neighbor watched him during the day. I worked 12 hours a day. I paused, drank some water. No one spoke. I didn't stay a secretary. I studied at night. I took courses. I learned English at the public library. I learned accounting, finance, management. I became an expert in things no one taught me, all on my own, all while raising a child alone. All while paying rent, food, medicine, and clothes. Victoria stared at her plate. Her arrogance began to crack. And you know what happened, Victoria? I climbed little by little, from secretary to assistant, from assistant to coordinator, from coordinator to manager, from manager to director. It took me 20 years. 20 years of nonstop work, of sacrifices you can't imagine. But I did it. And do you know how much I earn now? Victoria shook her head. $40,000 a month. Silence fell, as if someone had hit the pause button on the universe. Ethan dropped his fork. Chloe's eyes flew open. Charles frowned, incredulous. And Victoria froze, mouth slightly open. 40,000, I repeated, every month, for almost 20 years now. That's nearly 10 million in gross income over my career. Not counting investments, not counting bonuses, not counting company stock. Victoria blinked several times. I don't understand. You make $40,000 a month? That's right, I answered calmly. I'm the regional director of operations at a multinational corporation. I oversee 5 countries. I manage budgets of hundreds of millions of dollars. I make decisions that affect more than 10,000 employees. I sign contracts you couldn't read without lawyers. And I do it every day. Ethan was pale. Mom, why did you never tell me? I looked at him tenderly. Because you didn't need to know, son. Because I wanted you to grow up valuing effort, not money. Because I wanted you to become a person, not an heir. Because money corrupts, and I wasn't going to let it corrupt you. But then Chloe whispered, why do you live in that small apartment? Why do you wear simple clothes? Why don't you drive a luxury car? I smiled. Because I don't need to impress anyone. Because true wealth isn't flaunted. Because I learned that the more you have, the less you need to prove it. I looked at Victoria. That's why I came dressed like this tonight. That's why I pretended to be poor. That's why I acted like a broke, naive woman. I wanted to see how you would treat me if you thought I had nothing. I wanted to see your true colors. And oh, Did I see them, Victoria? I saw them perfectly. Victoria was red with shame, anger, and humiliation. This is ridiculous. If you made that much money, we would know. Ethan would know. Why would he believe you're poor? Because I allowed it, I replied. Because I never talked about my work. Because I live simply. Because the money I earn, I invest, I save it, I multiply it. I don't spend it on flashy jewelry or strutting around in expensive restaurants. Charles cleared his throat. Even so, this doesn't change the fact that you were rude, that you misinterpreted our intentions. Really? I stared him down. Did I misinterpret when you said I was a burden to Ethan? Did I misinterpret when you offered to pay me $700 to disappear from his life? Did I misinterpret every condescending comment about my clothes, my job, my life? Charles didn't answer. Neither did Victoria. I stood up. Everyone looked at me. Let me tell you something no one has clearly told you. Money doesn't buy class. It doesn't buy true education. It doesn't buy empathy. You have money, maybe a lot, but you don't have an ounce of what really matters. Victoria stood up too, furious. And you do? You, who lied, who deceived us, who made us look like fools? I didn't make you look like fools, I replied. Icy. You did that all by yourselves. I just gave you the chance to show who you are, and you did it magnificently. Chloe had tears in her eyes. Mother-in-law, I didn't know. I know I cut her off. You didn't know. But your parents knew exactly what they were doing. They knew they were humiliating me. And they enjoyed it until they discovered that the poor woman they despised has more money than they do, and now they don't know what to do with that information. Victoria trembled. You have no right. I have every right, I replied. Because I'm your son-in-law's mother. Because I deserve respect. Not because of my money, not because of my job, but because I'm a human being. Something you forgot throughout this entire dinner. Ethan stood. Mom, please, let's go. I looked at him. Not yet, son. I'm not finished. I looked at Victoria one last time. You offered to help me with $700 a month. Let me make you a counteroffer. I'll give you $1 million right now if you can prove to me that you've ever treated someone without money with kindness. Victoria opened her mouth, closed it, and said nothing. Exactly, I said. You can't, because to you, people are worth only what's in their bank account. And that's the difference between you and me. I built wealth, you only spend it. I earned respect, you buy it. I have dignity, you have bank balances. I took my old canvas bag. I pulled out a black platinum credit card. I set it on the table in front of Victoria. This is my corporate card, no limit. Pay for the entire dinner with a generous tip. Consider it a gift from a poor, naive mother. Victoria looked at the card as if it were a venomous snake. Black, shiny, my name engraved in silver letters. Olivia Brooks, Regional Director. Her hand trembled a little when she picked it up. She flipped it, examined it, and then looked at me. In her eyes, the glint of superiority was gone. There was something different, something I never thought I'd see in her. Fear. I don't need your money, she said, voice breaking. I know, I replied, but I didn't need your pity, either. And yet you offered it to me all night long. So take it as a gesture of courtesy or good manners, something you clearly didn't learn. Despite all those trips through Europe, Charles tapped the table lightly. Enough. This is getting out of control. You're disrespecting us. Respect? I repeated. How interesting that you use that word now. Where was your respect when your wife asked if my salary was enough to live on? Where was it when she suggested I was a burden to my son? Where was it when she offered to buy me off so I'd disappear? Charles clenched his jaw. Victoria only wanted to help. Victoria wanted to control, I corrected. She wanted to make sure the poor mother didn't ruin her daughter's perfect image. She wanted to eliminate the weak link in the chain. The problem is, she picked the wrong link. I looked at Chloe. Her head was down, hands in her lap, trembling. Chloe, I said softly. She lifted her face. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. That my parents. Don't finish that sentence, I interrupted. Because you did know. Maybe you didn't know about my money, but you knew what your parents are like. You know how they treat people they consider inferior, and you did nothing to stop them." Chloe sobbed. I wanted to say something, but they're my parents. "I know," I replied. "And Ethan is my son. And even so, I let him make his own decisions. I let him choose his life, his wife, his path, because that's how you love, with freedom, not with control, not with money, not with manipulation." Ethan moved closer to me. "Mom, forgive me. Forgive me for not asking, for assuming, for thinking you were—" His voice broke. I hugged him. "You don't have to apologize, son. I did what I did for a reason. I wanted you independent, to value what's right, not to depend on me financially, to build your own life. But you made me feel like I had to protect you. Ethan said I should worry about you, that you were fragile." "I know," I replied. "And it wasn't wrong for you to think that, because that's how you learn to care, to worry about others, to be empathetic. Those are lessons money can't buy." Ethan hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Victoria was still standing, rigid, watching the scene with a mix of confusion and contained anger. "This doesn't change anything," she said at last. "You lied. You tricked us. You came with hidden intentions. You acted in bad faith." "That's true," I nodded. "I acted. I pretended to be something I'm not. Exactly what you do every day." "What's that supposed to mean?" Charles asked. "That you hide behind your money, your jewelry, your trips, everything you can buy, but inside you're empty. You don't have deep conversations. You don't have real interests. You have nothing to offer beyond a bank account." Victoria let out a dry, bitter laugh. "Coming from someone who lied all night, that's hypocrisy." "Maybe," I replied, "but my lie exposed the truth. Your truth, and now you can't hide. Now you know that I saw you, that I felt every comment, that I stored every insult disguised as advice, and that I'll never forget it." The waiter approached timidly. "Excuse me, would you like anything else?" Charles shook his head brusquely. "Just the bill." The waiter nodded and left. Victoria sat down again, defeated. Her posture was no longer elegant. It was that of someone who had just lost something important. And it wasn't money. It was power. "Olivia," she said in a softer, less aggressive voice, "I don't want this to ruin the relationship between our families. Ethan and Chloe love each other. They have a life together. We can't allow this." "Allow this what?" I cut in. "This to ruin your plans? This to expose what you really think?" "It's too late for that, Victoria. The damage is done." "But we can fix it," she insisted. "We can start over." "No," I said, firm, "we can't. Because now I know who you are and you know who I am. And that truth isn't erased with empty apologies or fake smiles. You treated me like garbage, and you did it gladly because you thought you could." Charles cleared his throat. "You're the one who came here lying. You provoked this." "You're right," I nodded. "I provoked it because I needed to know. I needed to confirm what I already suspected, that you're not good people, that your money doesn't make you better, that you're exactly the kind of people who look down on others for not having what you have." Victoria wiped away a tear. "We're not bad people." "Maybe not," I replied. "But you're definitely not good. And there's a vast difference between those two things." The waiter came back with the bill and set it in the center of the table. No one touched it. Victoria looked at my black card still in her hand, then at me. "I'm not going to use your card," she said. "We'll pay our bill as always." "Perfect," I replied. "Then keep that card as a keepsake, as a reminder that not everything is what it seems, that the woman you despised all night has more than you'll ever have. And I'm not just talking about money." Victoria set the card on the table. "I don't want it. I don't want your moral lesson either." I slid it back toward her. "Keep it anyway, because something tells me you'll need it. One day you'll run into someone like me, someone who pretends to be less than she is, and you'll make the same mistake again, because people like you never learn." Charles took out his wallet, laid down several credit cards, gold, all of them. He chose one and placed it on the bill. The waiter took it and left. No one spoke during those minutes. The silence was thick, awkward, heavy. Chloe cried quietly. Ethan held my hand. Victoria stared at the wall. Charles checked his phone to avoid eye contact. The waiter returned. "Sir, your card was declined." Charles's head snapped up. "What do you mean? Declined?" "Declined," the waiter repeated. "Do you have another method of payment?" Charles turned red. "Impossible. That card has a very high limit. It must be a system error." The waiter shrugged. "I can try again if you like." Charles handed him another card. The waiter left. Victoria looked at her husband, nervous. "What happened?" "I don't know," Charles replied, irritated. "It must be a bank error. Maybe they froze the account for security. That happens sometimes when you travel." I nodded with feigned understanding. "Of course, those things happen. How inconvenient." The waiter came back again. "I'm sorry, sir. This one was declined as well." Charles stood up. "This is ridiculous. I'm calling the bank right now." He stormed out of the restaurant. Victoria stayed seated, embarrassed, humiliated. "This has never happened to us," she murmured. "Never." "What bad timing," I commented without emotion. Ethan looked at the bill. "Mom, I can." "No," I cut him. "Off. You're not paying a thing." I took out my wallet, simple, old leather. I pulled out another card. This one wasn't black. It was transparent, heavy metal. A card owned by less than 1% of people in the world. I set it on the table in front of Victoria. She looked at it. Her eyes widened. She recognized it. "That's a Centurion." "It is," I replied. "Invitation only from American Express. Minimum annual spend of $250,000, $5,000 annual fee just to hold it, and benefits you can't imagine." Victoria said nothing. The waiter took the card carefully, as if it were something sacred. He returned in under 2 minutes. "Thank you, Miss Brooks. Everything is settled. Would you like the receipt?" "Not necessary," I answered. The waiter nodded and left. Victoria kept staring at the spot where the card had been. I stood, took my old wallet, my canvas bag, and looked at Victoria one last time. Dinner was delicious. "Thank you for recommending the place and for showing me exactly who you are. You saved me a lot of time, energy, and future disappointment." Victoria finally lifted her gaze. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from contained rage. "This isn't over," she said, voice trembling. "You can't humiliate us and walk away as if nothing happened. Chloe is our daughter. Ethan is our son-in-law. We'll still be family. You'll have to see us." "You're right," I smiled. "I'll have to see you at birthdays, Christmas, family gatherings. But now I'll see you differently. I won't wonder what you think of me anymore. I already know. And you'll know that I know. And you'll live with that. Every time you see me, every time you pretend to be kind, you'll remember tonight." Charles returned to the table, phone in hand, face pale. "There's a problem with the accounts," he said. "A temporary security block. It'll be resolved tomorrow." He looked at the table. "Did you already pay?" "Yes," Victoria answered, without looking at him. "She paid?" Charles looked at me. His pride was in shreds. "Thank you," he murmured, barely audible. "You're welcome," I replied. "That's what family is for, isn't it? To help each other, especially when someone needs a small allowance, say $700 or, in this case, $800, which is what this dinner cost." Charles closed his eyes. Victoria clenched her fists in her lap. Ethan moved closer. "Mom, let's go, please. That's enough." I looked at him. "You're right. It's enough." I turned to Chloe. She was still crying quietly. "Chloe," I said softly. She lifted her head. "None of this is your fault for who your parents are. No one chooses their family. But you do choose how you act, how you treat others, how you'll raise your children someday." Chloe nodded through tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered again. "Don't apologize again," I told her. "Just learn. Learn that money doesn't define people, that humility isn't weakness, that respecting others costs nothing, and that if you ever have children, teach them to see people's hearts, not their bank accounts." Chloe cried harder. Ethan hugged her. Victoria looked away. Charles stared at his phone, avoiding all eye contact. I headed for the exit. I took a few steps, stopped, and turned once more. Oh, Victoria, one more thing. She looked at me. Do you remember when you said you speak 4 languages? Victoria frowned. What does that have to do with anything? Just curious, I replied. In which of those 4 languages did you learn to be kind? Because clearly it wasn't any of them. Victoria opened her mouth, but no words came out. Exactly, I said. You can speak 100 languages and still never say anything worth hearing. I left the restaurant. Ethan walked beside me. The cool night air hit my face. I breathed deeply. I felt as if a great weight had been lifted off me. Not a physical weight, but an emotional one. The weight of pretending, of tolerating, of keeping quiet. Mom, are you okay? Perfectly, I replied. Better than ever. And you, Ethan? Ethan sighed. I don't know. I'm processing everything. I can't believe you never told me about your job, your money, everything you achieved. I stopped and looked him in the eyes. Does it bother you? He shook his head quickly. No, of course not. I'm proud, incredibly proud. But I also feel foolish, blind. You're not foolish, I told him. You simply saw what I wanted you to see. And I did it on purpose because I needed you to grow up without depending on me, without feeling like you had a financial safety net waiting. I needed you to fight, to work, to value everything you achieved on your own. Ethan nodded. I get it. But now I also understand why you never complained, why you never asked for help, why you always seemed so calm, because you didn't need anything. I smiled. I needed many things, son. Just not the kind you buy with money. I needed to watch you grow, to see you become a good man, to see you make the right choices. And did I, even marrying Chloe? He asked in a weak voice. Even marrying Chloe, I replied. She isn't her parents. She can learn. She can change. But that depends on her and on you, on how you build your relationship, on the values you choose to follow. Ethan stayed quiet, processing, thinking. A taxi pulled up in front of us. I had ordered a ride on the way out. I opened the door. Ethan stopped me. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you do it? Why did you come pretending to be poor? Why didn't you tell them the truth from the start? I closed the taxi door. I turned to him. Because I needed to know, son. I needed to confirm whether my suspicions were right, whether Chloe's family was really what I imagined. And, unfortunately, I was right. Ethan lowered his gaze. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize for them, I told him. But you do have to decide what kind of husband you want to be, what kind of father you want to be someday. What do you mean? He asked. That you just saw 2 very different ways of handling money and power. Your in-laws' way and mine. They use it to control, humiliate, feel superior. I use it for freedom, to help without showing off, to live in peace. You decide which road to follow. Ethan nodded slowly. I understand. I opened the taxi door again and got in. I rolled the window down. Ethan leaned in. Mom, one last question. Will you ever forgive Victoria and Charles? I thought a moment. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, I replied. Nor allowing it to happen again. Maybe I'll forgive them someday, when I see real change, when they start seeing people as people, not as numbers. But until then, I'll be simply polite, distant, and extremely cautious. And me? Ethan asked. Will you forgive me for not asking, for assuming, for letting this dinner happen? I looked at him tenderly. Son, there's nothing to forgive. You did what you thought was right. You wanted your family to meet. That's beautiful. What happened afterward wasn't your fault. It was theirs, and, a little bit, mine too, because I decided to play their game. Ethan gave a weak smile. You won. I won, I nodded. But I don't feel victorious. I feel tired and sad, because I confirmed something I didn't want to confirm, that there are people who will never change, that there are families broken even when they have money, that there are voids no bank account can fill. The taxi driver cleared his throat. Ma'am, shall we go? Yes, I replied. 1 second. I looked at Ethan one last time. Go to Chloe. Talk to her. Listen to her. Support her. But be honest. Tell her how you felt tonight. Tell her what you expect from her family and from her. Because if you don't set boundaries now, this will happen again and again. I will, Ethan promised. I love you, Mom. And I mean it more than ever now that I know who you really are. You're incredible. I smiled. I love you too, son. Always. I always will, no matter how much money I have or don't have, because love has no price. And that's a lesson Victoria and Charles will never learn. Ethan stepped back from the taxi. I signaled to the driver, "Can we go?" The taxi started. I looked out the window. I saw Ethan walking back to the restaurant, shoulders low, thoughtful. He was probably going back to find Chloe, face his in-laws, have hard conversations. And I felt proud, because that meant he was maturing, that he was learning, that he was choosing to be better than the example he had just witnessed. The taxi sped through the city's lit-up streets. I closed my eyes and thought about everything that had happened, every word, every look, every moment of tension. And I wondered if I had done the right thing, if I had been too harsh, too cruel, too vindictive. But then I remembered every disguised insult, every condescending comment, every look of contempt, and I knew that no, I hadn't been too anything. I had simply been honest. Finally, the taxi crossed the city's empty night streets. The building lights slid by the window. I opened my old canvas bag and took out my phone. A simple phone, nothing flashy. I had 3 unread messages. One from my assistant asking about a Monday meeting, another from a colleague congratulating me on a closed contract, and one from an unknown number. I opened the unknown message. It was from Chloe. "Mother-in-law, please forgive me. I didn't know my parents would be like that. I'm ashamed. I need to talk to you, please." I looked at the message for a while. I thought about replying. Then I decided not to. No, I still needed time. She needed it too. Words rushed out by guilt rarely mean anything real. True changes require time, reflection, and consistent action. I set the phone aside. The taxi driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. "Sorry to ask, ma'am. Everything okay?" "Yes, everything's fine." "Why?" "You got in very quiet, and usually people leaving that restaurant are happy, talking about how delicious dinner was. You left like you'd been in a war." I smiled faintly. "Something like that. Was it that obvious?" He shrugged. "I've been driving a taxi for 20 years. I've seen it all. Drunks, fights, couples breaking up, families arguing. And you have that look of someone who just said something she'd been holding back for years." "You're perceptive," I told him. "It's my job," he replied. "Besides, it helps pass the time. Want to talk about it?" "You don't have to, but sometimes telling a stranger helps someone who won't judge you, who doesn't know you." I considered his offer. It was tempting, but I shook my head. "Thanks, but I think I've talked enough today." He nodded. "I get it. But let me tell you something. Whatever happened in there, you did the right thing. I know because you're calm. You're not crying. You're not yelling. You're processing. And that means you spoke your truth. And truth always brings peace, even when it hurts." His words surprised me. He was an older man, maybe around 60, with gray hair and working hands. A simple man, like the one I pretended to be. "Do you believe in the truth?" I asked. "I believe in honesty," he replied. "Not always in absolute truth, because truth changes depending on who tells it. But honesty doesn't. Honesty is saying things as you feel them, without masks, without lies, even if it hurts, even if it makes people uncomfortable, even if it costs you something." I nodded. "You're right. My wife always said I was too direct," he continued, "that I said things without a filter, that I hurt without meaning to. And maybe she was right. But she also told me she never doubted me, because she knew that what came out of my mouth was real, not calculated, not manipulated, just real." I smiled. "She sounds like a good woman." "She was," he replied. "She died 5 years ago." "I'm sorry," I said sincerely. He shook his head. "Don't be. We had 40 years together. 40 years of honesty, of fights, of reconciliations, of laughter, of tears. And not once did I go to sleep wondering what she really thought, because she always said it, and so did I. That's a gift." You're right, I murmured. It's a gift. The taxi stopped at a light. May I ask a personal question? The driver asked. Go ahead. Are you rich? The question caught me off guard, not the question itself, but how direct it was. Why do you ask? Because I picked you up from a $1,000 per person restaurant, but you dress like someone who shops at discount stores. You have an old bag, worn shoes, but you speak like an executive. You move like someone with power, and you paid for the cab with crisp bills you took from a wallet that looks 20 years old. Observant, I commented. Part of the job, he repeated. So, are you? Depends on how you define rich, I replied. If you mean money, yes, I have enough, more than enough. If you mean happiness, I also have peace, health, a son I love, a job I'm passionate about. That makes me rich in many ways. He nodded, satisfied. I knew it. Truly rich people don't need to prove it. The light turned green. The taxi moved on. And what happened in that restaurant? He asked. If you don't mind me asking. I pretended to be poor, I replied, to see how they'd treat me. He let out a laugh. Seriously, that's brilliant. And how did they treat you? Like garbage, I said flatly. They humiliated me. They offered me handouts. They treated me as if I were invisible, less than human. He stopped laughing. I'm sorry. It hurt a little, I admitted. But it also confirmed something, that I was right about those people, that they weren't worth my time, that they didn't deserve my respect, and now they know it. Now they know who I am, and they'll have to live with that shame. The driver whistled softly. Must have been epic. It was, I smiled. It definitely was. We reached my building, an old, middle-class building. Nothing luxurious, nothing impressive, but comfortable, safe home. The driver parked and looked at the building. Do you live here? I live here, I confirmed. He shook his head, amazed. You really are special. Most people with money move to fancy areas, buildings with doormen, private security, gyms, pools. You live like a regular person. I am a regular person, I replied. I just have more money than most. But that doesn't make me different. It doesn't make me better. Money is just a tool, not an identity. He smiled. I wish more people thought like that. The world would be better. I took out my wallet. How much? 30, he replied. I handed him 100. Keep the change. Ma'am, that's too much. No, I said. You listened to me. You gave me perspective. You reminded me there are still good people. That's worth more than 70. He took the bill carefully. Thank you. Truly, thank you. Thank you, I replied. And keep that honesty. It's rare. It's valuable. Don't lose it. I won't, he promised. I got out of the taxi and closed the door. He rolled down the window. Ma'am, one more thing. Whatever happens tonight, don't regret it. Don't feel bad, because people like you, the ones who tell the truth even when it hurts, are the ones who change the world. Little by little, one conversation at a time. I smiled. Thank you. I'll remember that. The taxi left. I stood in front of my building, looking up at my 5th-floor window. The light was off, dark, silent, waiting for me. I went in and climbed the stairs. I never used the elevator. I preferred to walk to keep active. I reached my door. I took out the keys, the same ones from 15 years ago. I opened up. The apartment was cold, empty. I turned on the light. Everything in its place. The simple living room, the small kitchen, the dining table with mismatched chairs, the walls without expensive art. And I felt at peace, because this place was mine, truly mine. Not bought to impress, not decorated to show off, just a space to be me, without masks, without pretenses. I took off the old shoes, slipped out of the wrinkled gray dress, and put on comfortable clothes, an old, soft, familiar set of pajamas. I made tea, sat on the sofa, and turned on the TV. News. Nothing interesting. I turned it off. I sat in silence, thinking, processing, feeling. And for the first time in many years, I felt completely free. Free from pretending, free from keeping quiet, free from tolerating, free from being less than I was. Because that night I didn't just expose Victoria and Charles. I also freed myself from expectations, from judgment, from the need to hide who I was. And that was priceless, worth more than any figure in my bank account. My phone vibrated. Another message, this time from Ethan. "Mom, did you get home okay?" I smiled. I replied quickly, "Yes, son. I got home perfectly. I'm at home, resting." His reply was immediate. "I love you. Thank you for everything, for being who you are, for teaching me, for never giving up." I closed my eyes. I felt a tear roll down my cheek, not from sadness, but from relief, from love, from gratitude. I replied, "I love you too, always." I set the phone aside. I drank my tea. I looked at my simple apartment, my sanctuary, my truth. And I smiled. Because, at the end of the day, it didn't matter how much money I had. It didn't matter how high I'd climbed in my career. The only thing that mattered was this moment, this peace, this honesty with myself. I woke up early on Sunday, as always. 40 years of work trained me to get up with the sun, even though it was my day off. My body didn't know how to sleep in anymore. I made strong, black coffee. I sat by the window with the hot cup in my hands. I watched the city wake up, vendors opening their stalls, people walking somewhere. Life went on as always, indifferent to personal dramas. My phone rang. A familiar number, Ethan. I answered. "Good morning, son." His voice sounded tired. "Mom, I need to talk to you. Did something happen?" "A lot," he replied. "Last night, Chloe and I talked for hours. Her parents were there too. It was intense." I took a sip of coffee. "Tell me." Ethan took a deep breath. "After you left, I went back to the restaurant. Victoria and Charles were still waiting for their cards to work. It was humiliating for them. Chloe was devastated, crying, and I was furious more than I've been in years. I told them everything I felt during dinner. I told them they embarrassed me, that they treated my mother like trash, that their behavior was unacceptable, that I wouldn't tolerate it ever again." "And what did they say?" I asked. At first, Victoria tried to defend herself. She said they only wanted to protect Chloe, that they wanted to make sure I had a stable family, that they didn't have bad intentions. Charles said I was exaggerating, that it had been a normal dinner, that your reaction was disproportionate. I tightened my grip on the cup. Typical. "But then Chloe spoke," he continued. "She told her parents they were wrong, that they had been cruel, that she saw every comment, every look, every disguised insult, and that she was ashamed to be their daughter in that moment." His voice cracked. "Mom, I'd never seen Chloe stand up to them like that." I smiled faintly. "That's good. It means she's waking up." Victoria went hysterical, Ethan said. She started yelling that Chloe was ungrateful, that they sacrificed themselves for her, that they gave her the best life, that she had no right to judge them. Charles backed her up. He said you manipulated us, that you planned everything to make them look bad. I let out a dry laugh. "Of course, my fault." "That's what enraged them most," Ethan said. "I told them they were right, that you did plan it, but that they walked right into the trap because that's who they are. Because they really do treat people they consider inferior badly. That you only gave them the chance to show themselves, and they nailed it." "Well said," I murmured. "Thanks, I learned from you." There was a silence. Then Ethan continued. "Mom, I need you to know something. Last night I made a decision. Chloe and I are going to set boundaries with her parents. We won't cut them off, but we'll set clear rules. No comments about money, no comparisons, no attempts to control our lives. And if they can't respect that, then they'll have to live with the consequences." "And did they accept that?" I asked. "No," he replied. "They left, furious. They said we were ungrateful, that someday we'd regret it, that when we needed help, they wouldn't be there. Charles said he'd reconsider his will. Victoria said Chloe had chosen the wrong family." I shook my head. "Emotional blackmail, the last resort of those with no arguments." "Exactly," Ethan said. "But it didn't work. Chloe stood firm. So did I. They left the restaurant without saying goodbye, without looking back. And honestly, Mom, I felt relief, as if a great weight had been lifted, because it was I told him. The weight of living under their expectations, under their control. Now you can build your life as you want, not as they dictate. Thank you, Mom, Ethan said, voice emotional. Thank you for what you did last night. I know it was hard. I know it was uncomfortable, but we needed it. I needed to see who they really were. And Chloe needed to see there's another way to live more honest, more authentic. You're welcome, son. I only did what I believed was right. There's something else, Ethan said. Chloe wants to come see you. She wants to apologize in person. She wants to talk to you not as a daughter-in-law trying to look good, but as a woman trying to learn. What do you think? I thought for a moment. Tell her she can come, but not today. Give her a few days to process, to think through what she wants to say. Rushed apologies are hollow. The ones that take time are real. I'll tell her, Ethan promised. Mom, one more question. How are you after all this? How do you feel? I looked out the window. The sun was already high. The day had officially begun. I'm fine, I replied. Better than fine. I'm at peace because I finally said everything I needed to say, and I don't regret a thing. I'm glad to hear it, Ethan said. I love you. I love you too. Rest. See you soon. I hung up, finished my coffee, and stood. I decided to do something I hadn't done in a long time. Go. Out walking aimlessly, unhurriedly, just to wander and think. I dressed comfortably. Old jeans, a simple t-shirt, worn sneakers. I took my keys and left. The streets were full of life. Families strolling, children running, couples holding hands, vendors selling food. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. I crossed the nearby park and sat on a bench to watch people pass by. And I realized something. Most of those people probably didn't have much money. They lived with just enough, worked hard, and struggled every day. But they smiled, embraced, and enjoyed the moment. And then I thought of Victoria and Charles with all their money, their properties, their trips, their jewelry. Were they truly happy? Or were they just busy trying to prove something, trying to fill a void with material things, trying to buy worth, respect, and love? Things you can never buy. An older woman sat beside me. Good morning, she said with a smile. Good morning, I replied. Beautiful day, isn't it? She commented. Very beautiful, I nodded. She took bread from her bag and started feeding the pigeons. I come here every Sunday, she said. It's my moment of peace before the week goes crazy again. I understand, I replied. I needed a moment of peace too. Rough week? She asked. Something like that, I replied. More like a rough night. She nodded, wise. Sometimes one night changes everything. You're right, I murmured. May I give you unsolicited advice? Go ahead, I smiled. She pointed at the pigeons. Look at those birds. Some are big, others small. Some have pretty feathers, others scruffy ones, but they all eat the same bread. They share the same space. None believes it's better than the others. That's a nice metaphor, I said. It's not a metaphor, she replied. It's the truth. Humans are the only animals who invent fake hierarchies that measure worth with external things. Pigeons don't do that. They just live. They just are. We should learn from them. I smiled broadly. You're absolutely right. You should give lessons to certain people I know. She laughed. Oh, child, at my age I don't teach. I just observe and share what I see. But most don't listen. They're too busy running, buying, competing, forgetting that, in the end, we all end up in the same place. With or without money, with or without jewelry, with or without properties, we all end up turning into dust. How philosophical, I commented. How realistic, she corrected. I've lived 82 years. I've seen it all. And I can tell you something. The most miserable people I met were those who had the most, because it was never enough. They always wanted more. They were always competing, always comparing, and they died without ever truly living, without ever truly loving, without ever truly being. Her words resonated deeply, as if she had touched something I already knew but hadn't said out loud. Thank you, I told her, for sharing. She patted my hand. You're welcome, dear. And remember, It doesn't matter how much you have or don't have. What matters is how you treat others, because that's what remains. That's what endures. That's the only inheritance worth leaving. She stood slowly, put the empty bag away, and waved. Have a beautiful Sunday. You too, I replied. I watched her walk away. A small woman, bent with age, in old clothes and worn shoes, but with more wisdom than all the Victorias and Charlottes in the world combined. And I felt grateful. Grateful for that encounter, for that reminder, for that truth so simple and powerful. I stayed on the bench a while longer, thinking, feeling, processing everything that had happened, and I reached a conclusion. I didn't regret anything, not a single word, not a single action. Because everything I did last night was necessary. It was liberating. It was honest. And honesty, even when it hurts, is always the right path. 3 days went by before Chloe rang my doorbell. 3 days of silence, of processing, of reflection. When I heard the bell that Wednesday afternoon, I knew who it was. I opened up. There she was. No makeup, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, jeans and a plain t-shirt. No jewelry, no heels. She looked vulnerable, authentic, different from the woman I'd seen at the restaurant. "Mother-in-law?" she said softly. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. "Come in." She walked in slowly, looking around, seeing my apartment with new eyes. The simple living room, the old furniture, the walls without expensive decor. She sat on the sofa when I gestured. I sat across from her, waiting without pressure, letting her find her words. "I don't know where to start," she said at last. "Start wherever you feel ready," I replied. She took a deep breath. "I came to apologize, but not just with words. I came to explain why my parents are the way they are and why I kept quiet for so long." I listened in silence. Chloe continued, voice trembling. "My parents grew up poor in a tiny village abroad, without electricity, without running water, working in the fields from childhood. They watched their own parents die young for lack of medicine, for lack of money. They went hungry, they suffered, and they promised themselves they would never be poor again. That they'd do whatever it took to get out of there." I nodded. "I understand. That explains a lot." "They worked like animals," Chloe went on. "They saved every penny. They emigrated seeking opportunity. Charles built his business from scratch, literally from zero. And when they started making money, they never forgot what it was like not to have it. That's why they talk about it so much. That's why they measure everything by that yardstick. Because to them, money means survival. It means safety. It means never going back to that dark place." "It's understandable," I said. "Trauma does strange things to people." Chloe nodded. "But that doesn't excuse how they treated you." "I know. And I want you to know I saw everything. Every comment, every look, every insult. And I stayed quiet because I've done it my whole life. Keeping quiet, accepting, letting them control everything, because they taught me that contradicting them was betrayal. It was being ungrateful." "And now?" I asked. "Now I understand I was wrong," she replied. "That love isn't control. That family isn't blind obedience. That I can love them and still disagree. Ethan helped me see it. You helped me see it. That night at the restaurant, when you revealed yourself, when you told them everything, it was like someone ripped a blindfold off me." Chloe wiped her tears. "I always knew something was off. I always felt their way of measuring people was wrong. But I convinced myself it was me, that I was too sensitive, that I didn't understand the world. But you showed me I was wrong, that there's another way to live. A way where money doesn't define your worth, where humility is strength, where authenticity is wealth." I took a sip of water. "Chloe, I didn't go that night to change you. I went to protect myself, to know who I was dealing with." "I know," she replied. "And I'm grateful, because your brutal honesty saved me. It saved me from becoming my mother, from perpetuating that cycle, from teaching my future children that people are valued by what they have. I don't want that. I don't want to be that. And your parents?" I asked. "How are they after all this?" Chloe sighed. "Furious, hurt, humiliated. Victoria hasn't spoken to me in 3 days. Charles sent me a message saying I disappointed him, that I chose strangers over my own blood, that I'll regret it someday." She paused. "And you know what's strange? I don't feel bad. I feel free." "That's good," I said. "It means you made the right decision." Chloe nodded. "Ethan and I set boundaries. We told them they can be part of our lives, but only if they respect us, if they respect our decisions, if they stop trying to control us with money or emotional blackmail. And if they can't, they'll have to accept a distant relationship." "And how did they take it?" I asked. "Badly," she replied. "Victoria said we're ungrateful, that they sacrificed for me. Charles threatened to disinherit me, to cut off all financial help, as if that were the only thing we cared about, as if our love depended on their money. And that's when I realized they truly believe that. They really think their worth is in their wallet." "It's sad," I commented. "Very sad," Chloe nodded. "Because they have so much and enjoy nothing. They just accumulate, compete, brag, but they never ask if they're happy, if they have peace, if they have real connections with people. They just count properties and feel victorious, while inside they're empty." She was quiet for a moment and looked straight at me. "Mother-in-law, I want to ask you something. Tell me. I want to learn from you. I want you to teach me to live with dignity, to be rich without needing to show it, to have peace in the middle of chaos, to be strong without being cruel. Because that night I saw something in you I never saw in my parents. I saw class. I saw real power. I saw a woman who doesn't need to shout to be heard." I smiled tenderly. "Chloe, I can't teach you that. You learn it by living, by making mistakes, falling, getting up. The only thing I can do is share my experience and tell you the road isn't easy. You'll face criticism, judgment, people who won't understand why you live differently. But if you stay true to yourself, if you live according to your values, you'll find peace. And that peace is worth more than any amount of money." "I want to try," Chloe said. "I want to be better, not just for Ethan, but for me, because I deserve to live, without that constant pressure, without that need to impress, without that fear of not being enough." "Then do it," I told her. "But not all at once. Do it little by little. Start by questioning your habits, your purchases, your motivations. Ask yourself before every decision, is this for me or for others? Does this bring me peace or just appearance?" Chloe nodded, taking mental notes. "And my parents? Do you think they'll ever change?" I looked at her honestly. "I don't know. Change requires recognizing a problem, and they don't think they have one. They think the world is wrong, that people are ungrateful, that they're the victims. Until they see that, change isn't possible. But you can change. You can break the cycle." "I will," she promised, "with Ethan's help, and I hope with your guidance too." "You don't need my guidance," I replied. "You just need your inner compass. That voice that tells you right from wrong, that voice you silenced for years to please your parents. Listen to it, trust it, follow it." Chloe wiped away the last tears. "Thank you, mother-in-law, for everything. For your patience, your honesty, for not giving up on us." "There's nothing to thank," I said. "Just promise me one thing. When you have children, teach them people's value, not their price. Teach them empathy, humility, and kindness. Things that cost nothing but are worth everything." "I promise," she said firmly. "I promise with all my heart." We hugged. A real hug, warm, honest. No performances, no masks. Just two women connecting as human beings. Chloe left an hour later, lighter, freer, with hope in her eyes. I closed the door behind her. I sat on the sofa again, looked at my simple apartment, and smiled, because this was enough. This was everything. An honest space, an authentic life, real relationships. I didn't need more. I never did. My phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "Mom, Chloe told me about her visit. Thank you for receiving her, for listening, for giving her a chance. I love you more than words can express." I replied simply, "I love you too, son. Always." I sat by the window. I watched the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, and in that moment I understood something fundamental. Real wealth isn't how much you have. It's how much you enjoy what you have, how much peace you feel, how many genuine people surround you, how many times you can look in the mirror and be proud of who you are. Victoria and Charles had millions, but I had this calm, this authenticity, this pure love for my son, and that made me infinitely richer than they were. I never pretended to be poor again. I didn't need to. I had already learned what I needed to learn. I had already seen what I needed to see, and I had already released what I needed to release. Victoria and Charles went on being who they were, rich in money, poor in spirit. But that was no longer my problem. I had spoken my truth. I had set my boundaries. I had protected my peace. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't have to pretend who I was. I simply was Olivia. Mother, executive, woman, survivor, fighter, rich in every sense that truly matters. And that was more than enough. It was everything. Did you like the story? And from which city are you listening? See you in the comments. If you enjoyed it, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I can't wait to read your comments about the story. On the screen you can see 2 new life stories I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect.